Welcome to the Dragon's Den. I am your venerable host Orochi, and today we're going to be talking about Pathfinder 2 and one of the most brutal rules in the system and why it makes going down in combat detrimental. This came to my attention because there was a forum post that was talking about why this one class, it was all discussion on this one class, and why it was really bad to go down as that class, worse than everyone else. And the way this person was describing it made me think, I don't think they actually know how the downed rules actually work in the game. And I started thinking about that, and I'm like, I'm willing to bet that the majority of people don't actually follow how the downed rules in Pathfinder 2 work, because they are so brutal and just not what you expect. No other system has ever done it that way. And one of the rules is like 2nd edition D&D levels of brutality. It's really, really bad. And that's what I want to talk about, but more in a general theme of going down in combat in Pathfinder 2 and how it was specifically designed to be better than 5th edition. Because in 5th edition, when you go down, somebody just casts a healing spell in your general direction, you get a bit of hit points back, you are immediately back in combat. Immediately. No downsides whatsoever. You spend half your movement to get up, and bam, you are combat ready. And in Pathfinder 2, we have 3 rules in play that each of on their own, I think, would be degrees of limiting, but dealable. But each one of them are like multiplicative with each other to make going down in combat absolutely brutal. Oftentimes, depending upon your build, I would say going down in combat means you stay down. You're not getting back up, because it's trying to get you up is a waste of time for your party, because it's probably not going to help them at all. And the first rule is the most sensible one, and that is the wounded condition. When you go down, you get dying 1. Dying works pretty much the same way as it does in 5th edition, except for when you get any amount of healing, you come back to consciousness. But you retain the wounded condition. So you're up, and you maybe get back into battle, but you're wounded 1, so if somebody downs you again, instead of going to dying 1, you go to dying 2. And it continues that way until you get to dying 4, and then you're just dead. And your dying condition can go up if you fail dying saves on your turn, if anybody hits you while you're down, or just taking any bad effects whatsoever can really be detrimental to you while you're down, especially persistent damage. Persistent damage will almost always kill you if you go down, because there's nothing you can do about it. It is really rough. But I think the wounded rules are fantastic. They, by themselves, they fix the problem of, bunny jumping, whatever it's called in 5th edition, where it's like, oh, I'm down. Oh, somebody healed me. I'm back up and fully combat ready. And I do some damage to the monster, and then it hits me for any amount of damage, and I go back down. But then I get a heal again, and I'm back up. And that just jack-in-the-box kind of gameplay that 5e has, the wounded rules by themselves fixes that problem. Except for when you consider most combats are between 4 and 6 rounds, depending upon your party comp. If you're really good party, probably 4 rounds is average. If you're light on the damage and stuff, 6 or 7 might be more your speed. So, by themselves, those rules mostly fix the problem. The second rule that interacts with this, that makes it a lot harder, is how are you getting back up? And it's like, you think, oh, well, just any healing spell. It's like, okay, but from where? Because healing, any sorts of healing, is a limited resource. And you got to think, what are the places that you can get healing from? It's like, well, the most basic one is battle medicine. But you can only get that on you once a day. So that is a very, very limited resource to get some hit points back. And then 99 times out of 100, you're still within one shot from most enemies of downing you again. So that's not super helpful. Otherwise, focus spells. There's not a lot of focus healing in the game, and like lay on hands is the best one, but it's lay on hands. That means unless you go down right next to your champion, they're going to have to waste time and effort getting to you and healing you and then get back to where they wanted to be. Or maybe even take attacks of opportunity for trying to help you in melee. So there's a lot of bad stuff that can go with that. And for spell slots, it's like, well, you got to look at what spell slot healing does. Because numerically, if you are not using one of your top 2 spell slots, then it starts getting low enough so that, yeah, you're more often than not going to be within one shot of going down from a monster again, unless you get a top level heal. And most characters only have 3 spell slots, so that's 6 slots a day from your first and second top 2 tiers of spells that you can get some healing spells in. Do you want all 6 of those spells to be heals? No. That'd be terrible. Only a cleric is good at that. Anybody else is going to have maybe two or 3 heal spells. And then they're going to have effect spells, counter effect spells, CC spells, something else in those slots. And so you got to think, okay, well, if you're only going to have available to your party like 2 to maybe 6 heals at most, if you have 2 casters, then, going down 4 times to even allow the wounded condition to get you killed is very unlikely, because that's going to be all of the healing from your casters. So you're either blowing through the majority of your healing just to get back up, or they're going to use it beforehand, which is the point, by the way. Like, all of these rules just want you to use your healing beforehand so that you're not playing like 5th edition and going down and getting up and going down and getting up, which is great, because that's really dumb. And so these 2 rules together kind of ensure that that won't really happen. You can't really get dead by the wounded condition because you can't get up often enough, because there's not really enough sources of healing to really do that, and it's very, very inefficient. But then we have this 3rd rule, and this is the doozy, because I think this rule was trying to work with the other 2 to kind of tell you, like, hey, really, stay down. Heal before you go down. That's how you play this game. But because of the way this rule works, it's if you go down, you stay down, because getting back up is so freaking hard. It is just unbelievably difficult. And so it really depends on what sort of character you are and what your fighting style is. If you're a caster, then you're probably fine. But for martial characters, who are the ones that are usually going down more often, your choice of weapons and how many hands you have free will determine if you can even have a chance of getting back up in combat. Specifically because of the rule that when you go down, you drop everything that is in your hands. And that is catastrophically bad. Because that means if you're a monk or ancestry that has natural attacks and you're really going in on that sort of thing or whatever, then you go down, you get healed. You spend one action to stand up, maybe triggering attacks of opportunity, which might drop you again. But otherwise, you're fine after that. And you can go about playing however you were. You may or may not have to spend an action getting back into a stance, which means 2 actions out of 3. You can still at least do something on your turn. You are the luckiest and most privileged of all classes or builds because this is your thing. Everybody else is kind of fucked. Then we go to duelists, or really any single weapon build, which is arguably like the lowest level of damage you can get for most builds because it actively tries to get like parry and disarm and stuff built up. If you go down in combat and then you get healed, you spend one action to stand up, and then you have to pick your weapon back up, and then you have one action left. Unless you're higher level and you're using a stance, well, then that's your whole turn. Otherwise, you get one action on your turn. And so you can see where this is going for everyone else. And it's not good. Because if you're dual wielding or using a two-handed weapon, and in some cases, if you're using sword and board, you can be screwed. Because you go down, you drop everything that's in your hands. You might need to have a discussion with your GM on how tightly strapped your shield is to your hand, because it doesn't really say specifically anywhere in the rules where that lies, but it does say that dropping a shield is a free action, in the same way that dropping a sword is a free action. And so if you think about the time that it takes for you to just open your hand to drop a sword, how are you going to spend that same amount of time to drop a shield? It must mean because it's not really actually strapped to your arm very well, because you're taking fractions of a second to get it off. So I would say, yeah, when you go down, you drop your shield as well. So what does that mean? That means you get healed, you spend an action to stand up, and then you spend an action to pick up your shield, or pick up your two-hander, or pick up one of your dual weapons. And then you've got a big choice to make. Do you spend your third action on your turn, thereby doing literally nothing for your whole friggin' turn, to pick up your secondary weapon, pick up your primary weapon, shield block with the shield that you picked up and hope your weapon's still there next turn, or regrip your two-handed weapon so that you can actually swing the friggin' thing? This is your whole turn. And you either go with it or you risk losing your other item, or you're just running away some and not actually doing anything that turn. And that's the turn you get healed to get back up. It's all gone. The whole turn is gone. So you better pray that the amount of healing that you got was from a top-level spell, and your healer has some feats that boost it, and they rolled really well, because otherwise you're getting hit once or twice, and you're probably going back down and eating dirt again. It's really, really bad. This rule catastrophically destroys most characters. If you go down in a tense situation, there is no point in trying to get you back up, because it makes you even more of a target and a liability. And I think most people probably ignore this rule, and I think that's for the best. I do not think it really has any purpose in the game. It was trying to help fix something, but it is so catastrophically overtuned that it does the opposite. It pushes Pathfinder 2 from this middle zone where, hey, it's not jack-in-the-box play, it's realistically balanced, and you have options. Instead, it shoves it into this other area where it's like, yeah, if you go down, you're dead. You can maybe spend some hero points to stay unconscious and then die if the party TPKs, but there's no saving yourself. The best you can do is assure you're not going to die immediately. And that's really bad. That's really, really bad. And the specific thing that was talking about this was about summoners. And all other casters are in a decent place because most of the time they can get up and run away. But if you're medium level, you're probably going to get up and then have to pick your friggin' staff or your wand that you were holding up. And maybe, depending upon your build, you have to stand up, pick your staff up, and pick a wand up because you were like, hey, I want to have lots of spells at the ready. So you're just as fucked as a martial character is because you're just going to be sitting there with crap defenses, having no actions left to do anything. And even if you just had a staff or a wand, that's still 2 actions to stand up and pick this up. You can't cast a spell, you're still pretty much useless for that round. It's just really, really bad to go down ever. And the one caster who is quite a bit different in this area is the summoner. The summoner specifically is strange in that they have less options for when they go down, but they do have options. Because when you get healed, you can either choose to get up and run the frig away, or get up and cast a spell, or you can act together to summon your Eidolon, and then your Eidolon gets 1 action. So it can get back into the fight, it can attack something that's next to you, or cast a 1-action spell maybe, or it has a little bit of options. The problem here is this leaves you on the ground still. You are flat-footed to everything around you, which is really not where you want to be. But you do still have options. It doesn't just eat your entire turn for nothing. You actually have the option to get up and run away, like some other casters do, whereas martial characters, by and large, don't really have that option without leaving their gear behind. And so this is really detrimental to a lot of characters. When you go down, you drop your stuff. So I would definitely say, maybe don't follow that rule, because it's really bad. You might need to have some third rule in there to help achieve the goal of making it so that going down is a big thing in your group. But if you're fighting difficult enemies, then just having that character out of the fight and, rearranging their initiative and maybe getting out of the order that you were relying on to do certain things is enough penalty in and of itself. You don't need to have this on top of that. So I just thought I should bring this to some people's attention because I don't think a lot of people know about this rule. It's sort of hidden in the book. It doesn't really come out and say, hey, when you get knocked unconscious, you drop all your stuff, but it does mention that when you get up after being knocked down, you have to pick your stuff up again. So who knows what the original intention was for when that stuff was written, but it's very bad. So hopefully a lot of people are more aware of this sort of stuff, that there are some rules in place that are really bad, but the reason they're there is to keep everything in line with this baseline idea of all actions are equal to other actions. Where in some ways that works out fine, but in a lot of places in the game that really doesn't work. And I kind of think Pathfinder 2 struggles too hard to try and keep this baseline and therefore a lot of the little action economy sort of rules are just really break down, especially at higher levels, where it's like, I can do this one special attack that does this awesome thing, or I could spend one interact action to pick a weapon up. I could literally break down a wall, or I could pick a grain of sand up off the floor. It just, because of the nature of what a single action can do, it gets wonky at certain things when you've got a lot of classes and abilities that inflate what the actions can do and combine actions and, you know, improve your action economy and all that stuff. The base assumptions of rules kind of get out of whack when you start adding in all this other stuff. But I just wanted to bring that up, and hopefully most people aren't following that rule, so they're having a lot more fun. That is all for now. Good night.